Well, hello, everyone. This is John Barron with Poets and Quants. Welcome to Backstage, where we examine online MBA programs from great business schools. We have three terrific programs from three terrific schools to present to you today. University of Florida's Warrington College of Business, Purdue Krannert School of Management, and SMU Cox School of Business. And representing these three schools and the programs are John Gresley, who's Assistant Dean and Director at Florida Warrington, Steve Bush, the Senior Program Manager at Purdue Krannert, and at SMU Cox, Hannah Newsom, Director of Admissions for the Online MBA and MBA Direct programs. Welcome all. Let's talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty of each of your online MBA or blended programs. How long have they been around? How long does it generally take to complete? How much flexibility do you provide students in each of these programs? Steve, let's start with you at Purdue.
Yeah, so at our MBA program, it's 100% online. And it's totally asynchronous. So students can go ahead and they could be immersed in our program right from where they are, totally online for the entire program. That takes about 2 to 2.5 years to complete on average. Just because on average it takes students about 2 to 2.5 years to complete our program, doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have the flexibility to have a little wiggle room there to allow for a little bit longer of a completion time. We're carousel style, and we allow students to take classes while they try to flex around their personal needs and their personal and work obligations.
Carousel style. Now, explain that to me.
So we have 3 starts throughout the year. We have a fall start, we have a spring start, and a summer start. Each one of the terms starts a 16-week full semester. During that time, students, they're not hard cohorted into the program, so they're not going to be with the exact same group of students that their entire time at the graduate school. So when we talk about carousel style, it's not strictly cohorted. They have some flexibility in order to go ahead and to take the classes as they need them.
Right. So you can jump on the carousel and a different horse at any given time in the cycle, and you get three shots at jumping on in any given year.
That is correct. That is totally correct.
Hannah, tell us about SMU Cox's program.
Yeah, absolutely. So SMU Cox is located in Dallas, for those of you who are familiar with Dallas, Texas. And we launched in 2019. So we just had our first graduating cohort last spring, and the program can be completed in 24 months. It is a cohort-based model, so we do have 3 start terms, but when students start, they do go through classes in a specific sequence. And although we recommend completing it in 24 months, we do have students who do take longer to complete based on, things that pop up in their personal lives. So there is flexibility to slow down if needed. But those cohort classes are based into sort of the first half of the program, or the first 4 semesters really are going to be those core classes that you're required to take, and you take them in the same sequence with your cohort. So you're really building those strong connections with your classmates and your professors. And in the last 2 semesters of the program, you get to start taking some electives. So we do have asynchronous and synchronous coursework. So each week students will be in 2 90-minute live Zoom sessions. So each class that they take 2 classes at a time, each class is going to meet once per week in the evenings over Zoom. And then there's asynchronous work that they'll complete in between class sessions, which they can do at their own pace throughout the week.
Great. John, what's it look like at Warrington?
Yeah, Warrington, we have a little bit of both of those programs, actually. Since 1999, we've been offering an online MBA program. We've got a 48 credit degree for somebody who's coming into the MBA program with no previous experience in business. as well as a 32 credit option for anybody who's got an undergraduate degree in business and doesn't need to take those core concepts. And these programs have both been part of our infrastructure for the entirety of those programs. So almost 25 years now we've been doing this. And we like to think that we've evolved with the times as well. So we started off doing some of those mixed hybrid things where you had to come to campus, but now we're in a fully asynchronous format. Most of our folks complete their program in the year or two, depending on which program they are in and the time that it takes. But we do have enough flexibility in there that if something comes up, like Steve and Hannah mentioned, you can take some time and get a little extra wiggle room if you need some time either at the end to stretch out for, company reimbursement or things like that, or if you need to take a pause and take a little more time in the classes. We do start 3 times a year as well. We are kind of cohorted though, so we're a little bit of both of those, like I said, in the sense that you kind of start with a group. More often than not, you finish with that group in the same cohort you started with, but we do have folks that kind of move around based on how life treats them, similar to the carousel model that Steve talked about.
That's great. I wonder if each of you could talk a little bit about whether or not you have concentrations or majors or specializations. Different schools have different words for these. Things are all pretty much the same. A sequence of courses that allow you to do a deep dive in a subject area. John, do you have specializations, concentrations, or majors?
We don't have anything that's defined on the transcript as a specialization or a concentration. Most of our program is lockstep. So folks come in, they take the prescribed courses based on the sequencing that makes the most sense in terms of understanding those concepts. We offer folks an opportunity to take at least 1 and sometimes 2 elective courses in the upper level of the program. So they can do either a global immersion trip where they want to do some international travel. They can pick a subject matter that we're offering here in Gainesville for a week-long residency that gives them a deep dive into that particular subject area. But all those are sort of based on what the students want and are kind of flexible in the sense of it's a little bit, but not a lot where we're going deep. We want to make sure we're providing that broad general picture of how a firm or an organization operates. So students come out prepared to do everything they might encounter a leadership role and not necessarily one specific thing.
Hannah, how about SMU Cox?
Yeah, similar to Florida, we don't have like a designated concentration or major, though students can take 7 electives in the last 2 semesters of the program. And where we're a little bit unique is that we do offer online electives, so students can, do the entire program virtually, but we also do allow our students to come on campus and take electives if they'd like to. So a lot of students who are in the DFW area and want to, get some of that campus experience have the opportunity to do so by taking electives on campus. And then, similar, like what we've seen with a lot of employers is they don't necessarily care specifically about a concentration or a major on that transcript, which I'm sure John would say too, they've seen, but they care more about those skills that students are learning in specific areas. So our career management center and clubs, and we also have 15 centers and institutes, work really closely with students to give different trainings or teach different skills that employers might be looking for. So instead of those concentrations, our students do have opportunity and access to work with centers and institutes or take some of those classes. So, for example, in real estate, they might take training on some of the software that real estate folks are using, or in finance, they might do some of that training as well.
Steve?
Yeah, we actually have 4 non-mandatory specializations that students can opt into. So within our 48 credit hour curriculum, students have the option to use some of their elective credits to get one of these specializations. So they have about 9 to 15 credit hours to play around with to get a specialization in either business analytics, innovation and technology commercialization. We have 2 additional ones in leadership, negotiation, and change management, and then our final one in global supply chain management. And students generally pick their specialization after their first semester when meeting with their academic advisor. And this is going to allow them to add a little bit more focus to their elective if they choose to go ahead and do that. And it doesn't just give them more professional skills, but it also helps with their career marketability, because these specializations aren't just an additional line of text on their diploma. As I like to say, they actually earn a graduate certificate within the MBA curriculum as well. So that's kind of something that we do at the graduate school, and something we're very happy to offer our students.
That's great. What would you say is the difference between an online MBA student and a full-time residential MBA student? There are obvious differences, and there may be more subtle differences. Steve, how would you delineate the two?
I would say a lot of the students that we are seeing like to come to our program for that asynchronicity. That's why they're choosing a fully online program. They have these work obligations. They have these personal obligations because they are working adults with families. What the asynchronicity and the complete online immersion allows for is students to get the education on their time. So that's going to be the main difference that I see between our residential students along with our online students, is that residential students may be able to, conform to more rigid schedule or to show up for a hybrid course in person, whereas our online students, they're really looking for that flexibility within our curriculum.
Right. Hannah, I would imagine you agree with what Steve said, pretty much.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I think what we hear a lot is students who have to travel a lot for work and want the flexibility to be able to attend class wherever they are. So one week that might be, in California, I think where you're located. The next week it could be in Asia, right? And really the online format gives people the flexibility. The other thing that we hear a lot about is folks with kids. Like, I have small kids myself, and I think about like the hustle and bustle of bedtime and then trying to somehow leave the house, or like having my partner do that like 2 times a week. But really with the online section, we have classes that start at 8:15 Central Time, and so a lot of our parents of young kids will jump on class, like 8 p.m. bedtime for the kids, 8:15 class, and then they can very easily get that work done while still being home and not having to fight the Dallas traffic or whatever it might be. So I think that flexibility that Steve was speaking to definitely resonates with students we see at SMU Cox who want that online format.
Yeah, John, I can't imagine there's anything more to add to all this, but if there is, you're welcome to do so.
Let me blow your mind a little bit here, John. I think a big differentiator between the full-time students and the online students is experience. Those of us who've been in the business for a long time know that typically full-time MBA students full-time MBA programs attract students with 3 to 5 years of work experience. And we saw today when Poets and Quants released their best online programs of 2023 that the average work experience in online programs is about 10 years. And so the online program, as Hannah mentioned and Steve mentioned, really brings in that ability to be flexible and to balance life. And so you get people who come to an online MBA program later and they have more experience. They've maybe tried a couple of things. They've done some things. They've grown as a professional. And so when they show up in that online classroom, they really know what they're trying to achieve, and they probably have a really good sense of where they're headed. And that's a really big, powerful thing when you're talking about your network, when you're expanding it and you're adding in these people who have that drive, who have that experience, and who can bring that real life, those real life concepts to bear in a classroom. That's really powerful and really exciting. And that's a big draw for a lot of folks to pick an online MBA program. And we certainly get some that are younger and have less experience in that. But for the most part, I think a big difference between the two in the population for us is the experience that they bring to the classroom.
And you get to apply what you learn.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was just about to say, John. I was going to say, if I could, like, I think a lot of folks in online programs are already in leadership positions and they're looking to bring their, career to the next level. But the great thing is you can go to class on a Tuesday night and apply what you learn on a Wednesday. So you're not having to like take time out to figure out what am I learning and how can I apply this in 2 years, right? You have these people who are actually able to like grow and apply what they're learning as they are, in their real work environments, which I think is really powerful.
Your boss thinks you're smarter on Tuesday, and that's great. Everybody loves
that.
Don, if you had to identify the key differentiators for your program, what would they be?
I think one of the big differentiators for us is time. Having been in the online space now for almost 25 years, we've learned a lot of things. When we started doing this, and I know that some folks who've been around with us a long time know that we used to do this on VHS tapes. And that's a weird thing to think about because most of the people in MBA programs nowadays don't know what a VHS tape is.
True.
But when we started doing it, we shipped out VHS tapes, and we've grown along with the technology from VHS all the way through now to on-demand streaming. And the subtle part about that gets missed is that our faculty have grown up in that same way. And so when you're talking about how do you get a classroom experience in the online space that resonates, it really is important that the faculty know what the students are going through. And when they've had to deal with the technology problems, with balancing the synchronous versus the asynchronous, bringing all that to bear to make that experience work for those online students incredibly important. And our faculty have been there all along. They've grown up with the program. They're the innovators in the space for us. They're part of what makes it great. And that really makes the experience that much more interesting. And that's not to say that the folks that aren't coming into the space now in a world where we're all hyper online aren't offering something as well. Because I will say I'm often envious of some of those things that are out there, right? When you are able to look at the folks who've learned all the lessons that we learned the hard way, it's like, wow, can we do that? And we've got a lot of things that are also entrenched that we have to work through sometimes, where it's like, well, we've always done it that way. So there's good and bad of that. But I think one of the big things that separates us at the University of Florida is that length of reputation, that learning as we've done it, the growth together. And that really is something we're able to bring to bear for the students to make sure that they're getting a faculty experience, a staff experience, a student experience that really looks and feels like what people expect from an MBA program.
Great. Hannah, what makes the SMU Cox Online MBA stand out?
Well, John, I don't know if you saw the Poets and Quants rankings that just came out yesterday, but super excited that we were just ranked number 17 for online programs, and we're really, really excited about that ranking. And I think it speaks to just, you know, the dedication and time and really desire that all of us here at Cox have to make our program great. But I think some of the things in particular is, you know, we have the same professors as our residential programs, right? It's not a different group of professors who are teaching our online students. Our online students have the exact same access to the career management center, to the recruiting opportunities, to the employers, you know, the ability to really integrate into the SMU Cox community. So, you know, like I said earlier, students in the DFW area often do come to campus just for the resources like clubs, libraries, study spaces, but our online students really also have access to all those same resources and the networking opportunities as well that our CMC works really hard to put online and virtual options for them. I think those live Zoom sessions, of course, a lot of programs have live classes. We have really small class sizes in those live sessions, so we keep them to about 15 students. And that really allows, you know, like if you think about what we're doing right now, gallery, like you can see everyone in Zoom on the same page when there are only 15 students. So our students really get to know each other, get to know their professors. We talk a lot about Cox as being sort of the ally for business, ally for life, while students are here and while they go, you know, off to their next thing after school. And I think one of the reasons that we can say that honestly is because of those small class sizes, those really genuine connections that people make through the program. And then I kind of already mentioned the ability to take classes in person for some people who want that experience towards the end of their program. And then our cohort model, I think, also makes a big difference in, you know, going through the program together, graduating with those same people, having that network of people, and really kind of knowing when you graduate that you've gotten to know a solid group of people, you know who your network is, and you're part of that strong alumni network.
Steve, the differentiators at Purdue.
So one of the things that I think really differentiates our program is our student experience, you know, not just inside of the classroom itself, but outside of the classroom. And one of the ways that we really bolster that experience is through having 3 unique staff members for Krannert online programs known as success coaches. And a lot of times when I bring up success coaches, people are like, oh, you mean like my academic advisor? Well, no, I say we have those too. We have success coaches and academic advisors. So what's the difference? So traditionally, when we think of an academic advisor, we are thinking of an individual who is going to help you with your course sequencing, your plan of study, registering for courses, and navigating that process each semester. Whereas our success coaches are there to support students in all the ways outside of that academic administrative process per se. So when we look at our success coaches, they're going to be focusing on those external things that a student might be experiencing that may affect their internal work within the classroom. So for example, if they are just returning back from school after, you know, being removed from their undergraduate for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they might need help with their time management or readjusting back into the online classroom. So our success coaches are there to, you know, help them develop a plan in order to be successful. If there are personal situations that are bound to come up for students throughout their time within the program, varying in degrees of severity, how can we support these students? What resources can we connect them to make sure that they are retained into the program? And like I said, with the flexibility in our model, if they have to take a break for a little while, what's the plan to allow them to break and then come back in? And how do we keep them engaged throughout that process and coach them through the adversity that they might be seeing?
Steve, you used the word engage, and I wonder how your program engages students? I mean, what level of engagement do you have? How connected do students feel to each other and to the faculty?
So like Hannah had mentioned, we also have the same faculty that teach in our residential program teach in our online program as well. I've mentioned a few times now that our program is completely asynchronous, but that doesn't necessarily mean that students don't get that time to spend with their faculty or to engage with them. Faculty do hold an average of 1 to 3 office hours each and every week. They are, of course, available by appointment as well. So they're able to interact with the students, again, on their time when they need to see them. If they do hold a synchronous office hour, that might be reviewing a homework assignment, a case study, or a simulation, everything is recorded and everything is placed within our learning management system as well. So they're getting that faculty engagement there. Again, the majority of our classroom work is team-based. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer interaction that they're going to get as well. Peer-to-peer interaction when it comes to learning, it doesn't matter whether you're getting an MBA or if you're working in higher ed or what industry that you're in, that peer-to-peer interaction is going to be super important when learning, because you're going to pick up tips and techniques from your classmates on how they do things. One of the hallmarks of our program and what students like to comment on is, you know, they could be an international student. They could glean some ideas on how things are done here in the United States and then take them back to their workplace overseas. And it's not all business in our program either. We do have social engagements for students. Those same success coaches actually do a lot with creating online virtual engagements, social hours, affinity groups for students that they could go ahead and opt into. And currently what we're doing is we're mapping out a way here this spring and coming up next fall to actually bring in students to campus to have some sort of face-to-face engagement outside of our commencement here on campus.
Great. Hannah, what do you do to engage your students?
Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned earlier those small class sizes. One of the things we
Yes.
also do at the very beginning of the program is put people into success teams. And, you know, that's a fancier word for a study group. But the reason that we've chosen that specific language is because really our goal is to set every single student up for success. And so the goal of these success teams is putting students together with different backgrounds, so different industries representation, so that as students go through classes, like maybe I do not have a finance background, but I have a strong operations background. And so as we go through that operations class, I can sort of lead my team in those concepts. Whereas when we get to maybe finance, I can lean on one of my other cohort members in that success team. And so we really encourage those teams to meet regularly, to use each other as their first line of support. We actually also have student success coaches, and we also have faculty who give, you know, their office hours. Our goal is really for you to learn from your classmates and lean on them, because we know that going forward, like in 5 years after the MBA, like if you're wanting to switch into a different industry, like that success team member is going to know who you are. They're the ones who can kind of help you get into that next role at a different company, right? Or pivot into something else again. So those success teams are really critical, I think, for engagement. And we hear students, you know, say, when they graduate, they're like, you know, I would not have gotten through the program without these 4 other people, these 5 other people. The other thing that's really big for engagement in our program is we have required global immersion. So each student will take 2 immersions through their time in the program, and we offer domestic and international immersions each year. And those are opportunities for students to go somewhere and work on real consulting projects with real businesses. And so our students travel, just actually last month, we were in Cape Town, South Africa. You know, recently we were in Dubai. We've been to Colorado, Seattle, Madrid. Like you know, it's kind of different depending on the semester. But those experiences in person for our students are so meaningful. And I think they get to know each other really well in the classroom. We have these small class sizes, but there's something about being together in person, working on a common problem for a consulting or for a company, you know, and that I think those connections are just built even more and kind of solidified. And so, you know, I would say if you line up 10 of my students in front of us and ask them what their most meaningful experience or how they felt most connected, like 9 out of 10 of them would say the immersion as their top answer of just getting to know each other, working together. And then we also have fun, right? Like in Cape Town, we did a safari, right? Or, you know, we do like things that are kind of unique to that area that we're in. So it's not just all working. They also
Sure.
get that opportunity to experience the area.
That's great. John, engagement at Warrington, how do you do it?
Well, one of the things that we have is a required orientation, because part of what it takes to be a Gator is you got to come to the swamp. So we have everybody come in at the beginning. You spend a couple of days here. You really get a chance to know what it means to be a student at the University of Florida. You get to know what it means to be a student in the MBA program here. And what it really does is it gives you a chance to meet everybody. And we all know that when we go out into these asynchronous spaces or synchronous, depending on how you run it, you know, life gets reduced to sort of an 1.5 tile high icon. And it's sort of, you take that for granted that's who you're interacting with. And so the power of that orientation is, you know who I am, I know who you are, you know if I'm 6 feet tall or 5 feet tall, and those kind of little things can really create the fun conversations as you move through an MBA program. And so we do that at the beginning, and everybody gets a baseline of who's who in the program. And then from there, we're doing a lot of the similar kinds of things. We've got classes that are offered here in Gainesville. We've got opportunities to do global trips, like I mentioned earlier, and Hannah talked about at SMU. We've got some teamwork that both of my colleagues have mentioned. So a lot of that permeates what we do. We're really trying to figure out what can we get people to that isn't academic based, because certainly when you're trying to balance work and life and personal, and then you throw in the academic journey that many of our students are on, some of them just need that opportunity to get together without having to think about economics or accounting. And so we're really trying to figure out what the right way is and what the big draw is to get folks involved in those spaces. And we had a lot of success during the pandemic when we were doing those virtual happy hours, because we all needed the glass of wine or something to wind down with at the end of the day. And so a virtual happy hour worked. And then we went through that phase where we were all on Zoom burnout. And so nobody wanted to do a virtual happy hour. And we're kind of finding a new norm there now. But we're looking for ways now as the student engagement team really looks ahead to the future to say, how do we want to meet our students where they are, especially in a program that draws nationally, that has a student population that sits all over the country. There are pockets of Gators everywhere, and we're trying to crack that code of how do we bring them together. And that's something we're really looking forward to doing over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's great. I wonder if online education today is more relevant than ever, because so much of work today is remote. And, you know, even if you are reporting to an office today, more often than not, you are online working with teams that could be located all over the world. And that new mode of working basically is in sync with online learning. And so, you know, all this thing is kind of coming together now. And sure, the pandemic may have accelerated this trend, but it was happening nonetheless. John, do you think that online learning today is just so symptomatic of the way business is done in the world, and therefore it syncs up perfectly?
Well, I'm really glad you started with me, John, because I'm here in my office in Gainesville. Hannah's in her office in Dallas. Steve's in his office, I assume, in West Lafayette, but they've got backgrounds on, so I assume they're there. You're in California. This is exactly what you're talking about. I'm at work, but I'm working with a team of cross-functional, cross-country folks. So we're living the dream right here. But I would agree completely that has become what it is, what the skill set that's required to be successful in business these days. Really in anything is you've got to be able to blend the here with the everywhere in what we do. And I have a long enough memory that I can think back to when we used to sell the fact that you could do your MBA in your pajamas. Right? That was the value of an online MBA, because you could do it from anywhere, your bedroom, your pajamas, whatever. And that comfortable thing was a selling point. But nowadays, right, who would dream of making that as a selling point, right? Like, we can be serious. We can do serious things from outside of the stereotypical four walls of an office. And so the competencies that you learn in an online MBA program, how to collaborate, how to present and be persuasive, how to really connect with an audience that you might be able to see and you might not be able to see, are skill sets that are absolutely required for success. And there's no better place to learn those than an online MBA program, where that's what you have to do all the time. Sometimes you're doing it synchronously. Sometimes you got to put it together in a way where you're doing it asynchronously. So how do you make a point relevant that might be different in 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 2 days from now when your audience consumes it? So 100%, the online MBA is a great place for people to hone those skills and really develop what it takes to be successful in a virtual world that could be here, could be there, could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, John, because I'm curious for John, for you at Florida, and Steve, for you at Purdue, like, do you see, because we see at Cox that our online program is the most diverse in terms of gender, ethnicity, geographic location, obviously, and then, but like even industry representation. And so the way that I think about it is, if we're setting students up to really see how you can be successful working both asynchronously throughout the week in your assignments, but then synchronously, like when you get together for group projects or in class, like we know, right? We've all read studies from like EY and Harvard and everything that says the more diversity you have on a team, the more representation you have on a team, the more successful you'll be. And I think we see that in our online programs. Like we have the most diversity in our online programs. And so if we're telling students like, hey, look how successful you are here, take that flexibility, take to like people you might be hiring in the future. Like if you're going to hire a team, does it matter if they're located next door to you, or can you hire them from across the country, across the world? And will that give you a better perspective in order to do your work? So I think, John, what you were just saying is so like, yes, like, of course it, like the pandemic sped it up for us, but like, if we're teaching students that, like, we're reinforcing this idea that you don't have to be together physically to provide a solution, to give a, an answer to this problem. So when you're in your work environment, why does that have to be the case? Can you hire someone who's in a remote geographic location, but who can do this job really well? Like, what does that look like, So I know you didn't ask me my thoughts, John, but I assume you were coming there.
Oh, of course I was, and that's really super helpful. Steve?
Well, yeah, what I was just going to chime in with, what these ideas kind of underscore that we've outlined here, is just the accessibility to education that online programming allows one to have. I don't know how many students that I've talked to where they've said, hey, I never thought I could come to a place like Purdue University and get my MBA of all things. There was no way I was going to be able to go ahead and do that. When you have an online program that you can complete in your pajamas, I think that's a great selling point, but that's just my own personal opinion. But when you have that type of accessibility to, the world-class programs that are in this call here today, it adds to that diversity. It adds to that ability for people to come from across the country and across the world to get the type of education that we are setting out to give those students.
The other thing is you have no opportunity cost. In the sense, you do not have to quit your job and lose that income. And I would think that online MBA students are more likely to avail themselves of partial scholarship help from their employers in many cases. And when you have flexible programs and employers that have limits on scholarship aid, you could, if you want, maybe stretch it out a little bit more and collect more money from your company to pay for your degree. I don't know what percentage of all of your students have some sort of subsidy from their employers, but I imagine it's somewhat significant. Am I right, Steve?
Yeah, most definitely. I would say, without having the hard numbers right in front of me, at least half of our students are getting some type of tuition reimbursement. And for those of you who are watching this today or at a different time, I would highly encourage you to talk to your human resources department, your supervisor, somebody at work, and simply just ask the question about what the tuition reimbursement policy is for your workplace, to see if, okay, now you're able to access this education through an online modality, but now do you have the finances to go ahead and to fund this degree? Everybody is going to have a little bit of a different process. So when you are starting to feel out whether or not you want to pursue your MBA, start talking to your employer, find out what paperwork has to be put into play, find out what the caps are, what the limitations are. Some programs at certain workplaces have very, very generous packages that they offer their employees. You simply just have to ask for it. So I would definitely encourage you to start having that conversation now, and then soon after apply, so you're all ready to go with accessing the education online, and then of course having that plan to finance your degree.
Yeah, that's all great advice. John, do you have scholarships available for online MBA students?
We don't actually have scholarships available for our online MBA students. In general, the idea there is that there's a cost to run these programs. And so part of what we're really looking at is, in the state of Florida, education is a big important part of what we do. The governor and the state has put a tuition out there. And so we're adhering to that for the most part. And so we really are doing what we call accessibility. We're really affordable. Going back to that P&Q list, we are there at number 10, and we're sitting there at the most affordable among all those schools. And so the senior associate dean looked at those numbers and said, man, we're really a bargain. And I didn't go back and say, we're not a bargain, we're just really a good value, because bargain makes it sound like you're getting away with something. And I guess in a way at Florida, with that tuition and the outcomes that we're able to deliver, you really are. But, you get what you pay for. And I think the students are savvy enough to look around and say, how can we make this work? I totally echo Steve, though, in the sense that there's so much external opportunity out there for money in a world where companies are really going to be looking to retain their most talented people, certainly as they look at who they keep if the economic recessions come kind of as they're predicted. And so that's one of those things is really make sure you're talking to your companies, because they're going to keep the best folks and they're going to make the investment in those people. And they know who you are if you're really contributing.
Yeah, that's really true. Hannah, I wonder if you might speculate as to how your program may evolve over the next 5 to 10 years.
That's a great question. One of the things that I think that will continue to grow, right? We launched in 2019. So especially compared to Florida, we're a baby, but we're growing. And I think we've been really sensitive to market needs and student needs. Like, we are constantly gaining feedback from students. We do semesterly, surveys to kind of see what's going well. And it's allowed us to be really nimble and make changes kind of based on what we hear from students and what we see from the market. And so very recent, if you'll just let me say, like in the last couple of years, what we've done too, is we also launched a program called MBA Direct, which is for early career professionals. So for students who have less than 3 years of work experience, we allow them to do basically the online MBA, but stretch it out over 3 or 3.5 years. So the goal there is helping them get more work experience, so when they graduate, they're competitive for MBA level roles and salaries. And so I think, I don't know if we're going to launch another program, something like that, but I think that came out of really our idea of like, what is the market need? Who are we seeing that's applying and wanting the program? And so, I think as we continue to be sensitive to the needs of our students, that'll probably drive some change. Where we're focusing a lot of our time right now is additional elective opportunities, continuing to grow the online electives that we have on campus. We have over 170 electives that are offered, and our online MBA students have access to those, but we'll continue to build the online electives to, grow. And then I think just in terms of like population growth of our program, we'll see some changes over the next few years.
Right. Steve, what do you see in the future for Purdue?
So looking forward, of course, Purdue, we're known for our innovation and constantly staying on the cutting edge of education. And really from an academic standpoint, what I think we're going to be looking at is continuing with our management practicum, capstone, and frontier courses as they consistently and continually are evaluated and updated to ensure that students are able to really broaden their leadership skills, utilizing current business practices and ideas in order to help them make strategic business decisions under pressure. As far as the student experience goes, like I said, we're very proud of that. And what we're always trying to do as far as that goes is stay on the cutting edge and make sure that we're always looking for ways that we can improve that student experience. How can we engage students more? We like to build on that high touch experience that we have, especially being 100% online. That is very important, personalizing that service. And then with that, how can we incorporate additional technology in order to potentially enhance the in-home experience? There's been very, very loose conversations, but just, some brainstorms that our team likes to do to make sure that we are constantly coming up with new ideas. Can we use augmented reality? Can we use extended reality? What possibilities are out there to enhance that student experience to make sure that they're getting the personalized experience and support that they need, along with the education that they desire?
Great. John, what do you think will happen over the next 3 to 5 years to your online MBA?
I think the short answer is we're going to continue to evolve with the world around us. So will we actually have online MBAs or residential MBAs or whatever kinds of MBAs in 3 to 5 years? And I think that's the big question. That's certainly a conversation that I'm having with all of my colleagues, is in a world where location is sort of agnostic, what do we call these things? How do we deliver the same kinds of career-based courses, critical thinking, training exercises, consulting projects, experiential learning international immersions, like all those things are going to come together in a way that I think is really going to be powerful, that the technology is going to make those things seamless and easy to do. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we as business schools and how the UF MBA program responds to those opportunities and really figures out that way to make sure that regardless of where you're at, you're able to find a program, you're able to find an opportunity for yourself to give yourself a leg up in that career conversation for that first step in that long-term career success.
I'm going to pretend I'm a would-be applicant. I've been watching this webinar, and all three of you got me really interested in going for an online MBA. What advice do you have for me? What kind of questions should I be asking myself to make the right choice? John?
I think you got to ask yourself what you want. And I say this to as many applicants as I possibly can. It's very easy to see the MBA either in popular culture or in sort of top line information that's available on the web as a job opportunity and a moneymaker. And while those outcomes are very consistently delivered by MBA programs, the reality is we do so much more. We create critical thinkers, we create problem solvers, we create networks, we give people lots of opportunities based on what they bring to the table. And so you as an applicant have to ask yourself, what is it you want, so that you can ask the right questions? Because as we've heard from each of our programs today, we've got a lot of things going for us, and that's going to be true of any MBA program that an applicant talks to. So they've got to know what's important. Do they want flexibility? Do they want small? Do they want big? Do they want rankings? Do they want outcomes? What do you want? Because if you don't know what you want, or you don't have it well defined, you're going to get sold by all the great conversations you're going to have. And everybody who's offering you an opportunity at MBA is going to give you lots of opportunities, and it's easy to get lost in the mix. And then you wind up in a place where you're paying too much, or it takes too long, or it doesn't give you what you want. And there's really nobody to blame but yourself, because as we've illustrated here today, we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So the applicants have got to figure out what they want, and then have a conversation with the admissions office. My team, my admissions team, loves talking to prospective students, and they know that we're not right for everybody, but the ones we're right for, we can do great things with. So start that admissions conversation early, get in there on the ground floor, start that relationship, figure out if there's mutual beneficial opportunities, and then just go for it.
All good advice. Hannah, your advice?
Yeah, John ended with what I was going to start with, which I think is so important, is like have conversations with the people at the schools you're interested in. Because what I, and I remember this from, my full-time MBA days of like traveling, is I think sometimes people felt nervous to talk to us because they were like, what if I don't ask the right question or say the right thing? I mean, like, y'all, our job in admissions, or the people who work with us in admissions, is to get to know you and answer your questions. Like, we love meeting you. That's why we work in education, and why we do what we do. And I think getting to know the school and having those conversations will help you kind of figure out that fit, like John was saying. And so, at SMU Cox specifically, like, we offer the opportunity to a class visit or to talk with one of our current students, or we'll connect you with people so that you can kind of get the real story from the students, right? It's one thing for me as an administrator to say what's going on in the program. It's another thing to kind of hear the same thing or hear something different from a student. So I think those conversations are so important. So if you're listening to this conversation, you're already taking the first step in getting to know different schools. And then the second thing I would say, and this is something I feel like is true for the schools represented here in this call, is like, with our schools, you have access to all the same things that you would have access to in a full-time or a residential program in terms of the Career Management Center and student success coaches or academic advisors. Not all online MBA programs are created equal, and there are some online programs out there that are just kind of there for revenue for their school. And so ask those questions like, do I have access to career services? What are the outcomes for online MBA students? Because for the student, or for the programs like us who, treat these as real programs with, have high standards of admission, you'll get good answers. And I think that also helps you make sure that you're going to pay money for a good investment in making sure that these programs are the same as if you would get in person, just with that, adaptability and flexibility of being in your pajamas from your house, right?
Well, Steve, we know Steve likes to sit in his pajamas and in front of the computer. So, Steve, your last words on this, your advice?
Yeah. So as far as my advice goes, I have to agree with everybody on the call here. So let me build it this way. So starting with John, really finding that why and understanding what you want to do. It is implicit that, hey, I'm going to enter this program to go ahead and to upskill so I could get that next position, so I could move up within my industry. But don't view it exclusively as just checking a box so you could do that. View it as, once you've identified that you need to do that, what questions, like Hannah said, do I need to ask in order to find the right fit for myself? And then really start to focus on, okay, this is why I want to go ahead and do this. This is the program that I think is going to help fit that why through the questions that I ask. Now, what do I want to learn, or what am I going to need to learn throughout this program? Have I identified a college, a graduate school that is going to be able to help me learn the things I need to learn in order to make that progress? And those things combined together are really going to help build that intrinsic motivation. That's going to carry you through graduate school. If you're doing this for more than just checking a box to get that promotion or to move up in your industry, if you're really doing this, ask the right questions and you're looking to learn, the rest comes easy. Consistent performance in the classroom, not seeking perfection, just consistent performance while being motivated by that personal why that you have, is going to make you not only a successful applicant, but a potential successful MBA student as well.
This is all great advice. It starts with introspection and asking yourself, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And what's going to help me get there? And it's being living a more fulfilled life. Let's face it. I mean, I've always think that higher education is the road to a multidimensional life. Who wants to live in one dimension? You want meaningful work that makes you feel fulfilled. And one way to get it is to have the skill set and the network to get it. And it isn't about money. It's about experience. And it's about really living that multidimensional life. I want to thank Hannah. I want to thank Steve and John for a terrific session. I really enjoyed all three of you. I think we learned a lot about the online MBA and what you can do with it. More importantly, how your programs differ from each other. One online MBA program is not equal to another online MBA program. Each program has different bells and whistles, different features, and it's important to consider that in terms of what's the right fit for you. And for all of you out there, thanks for watching. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants.